on this computer. Okay, so hello everyone. I think you all know me, sadly. I think you've all had that privilege before, but thank you for joining us this evening. As I say, I'm Alison. I'm the project manager for Community Hubs, and I'm joined this evening by my colleagues Rachel and Lisa, who are both waving at you. And we're also joined this evening by James Baddeley. James is the consultant who's working for Cambridgeshire on some fundraising, and he's going to talk to us a little bit later about the project that he's fundraising for, which is a sort of digital health project, which obviously has clear links to community. Look at Graham with his thumbs up. Clear links to obviously some of the work we're doing in hubs about wanting to ensure people aren't digitally excluded. So I'll get James to introduce himself a bit later on. And I also thought I'll let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit later on as well, because there's a slot on the agenda where I'm just going to ask you if you want to say a few words about what's happening in your hub. So you can introduce yourselves at that point. We've got a little bit to get through tonight, so just a sort of recap of what I'm hoping to cover. So I've got a quick look at the grant funding that we're now operating under. As I say, a slot where I'd just quite like to hear about how your hubs are getting on. Then we've got a little slot about engaging more people in your hub, because obviously, you know, we know we want to keep increasing numbers if at all possible. James is going to talk about this digital health project, and then we're just going to conclude with a little bit of an introduction to community fundraising. It's something we've sort of touched on before, and obviously, you know, through the planning sessions that we've just been through with you that you know, fundraising is something we need to be thinking about now. So we'll have a quick look at that. So I'm going to get Lisa to share some slides, and if she can take me through to my first slide, which is about the grant funding, that would be great.
Okay, is that okay?
Is everybody else seeing the notes version, or is that just me seeing it because I'm the host?
Yeah, I've got the notes version as well.
Yeah, likewise. Bear with me just a second. Let's see what happens if I do it this time.
Yeah, just got the slides.
Yeah, hold on. Oh, hold on, bear with me.
I'm not too bothered about the notes version, to tell you the truth.
There's no notes on there.
It's not a deal breaker, Lisa.
I just know that it's
as long as she hasn't written anything inappropriate in there.
No, it's nothing.
I'm not sure I've got anything written in there, to be honest.
Nothing at all.
Goes to show what's in our brains, doesn't it?
Oh, I don't know why it's playing up today.
If you just go to slideshow at the top, does that?
Yeah, no, yeah, hold on. But let me just, I've got one open here. Let me just close that. That might be causing me a problem. Bear with.
I don't understand what was wrong with that version. That looked all right? Are they notes on the left? Is that what they're just the slides?
That's just that version is the version that we're whinging about, but actually we're not whinging about it too much. It's fine.
Let's go with that. You can, as long as everybody can see.
To be honest, the notes are too small to read.
There are no notes on there, so
it's just showing the presenter.
No notes.
Anyway,
right, okay.
So don't worry about it. I think we'll carry on as we are. Yeah, so I was just going to say, obviously, what we're doing now, I guess, is entering sort of a new phase, if you like, of the Community Hubs project. Obviously, up until the end of this month, you've all been funded under the original funding agreement that we had. But from 1st of July, where the funding for this project is there perfectly, so well done, is coming from Cambridgeshire County Council instead of the previous NHS funding. And it's coming through a funding stream they've got called Care Together. And what that's particularly sort of focused on is supporting older people. They want to help older people in the community, help them to remain at home, help them to remain independent. So obviously, just in thinking about what we're doing, you know, I know we've sometimes been a little bit concerned that whether our hubs are sort of a bit too focused on older people, but in fact, in respect of this funding, that's no bad thing, because as I say, the County Council are really keen that we should be supporting older people. That's not to say that it's to the exclusion of any other age group of people, so don't worry if your hubs are attracting a younger audience. There's no issue with that, but as I say, just the funding for this is sort of has this particular focus on older people. I just put a couple of notes there at the bottom about what we're actually supposed to be doing. So obviously our role is to continue supporting community hubs. We have a target of 8 hubs to continue to support, and in fact we have got those 8 already. That's not to say that we won't try and find some new hubs in due course. If we think we can sort of have got capacity and funding remaining that we could support some more, then again, the funder would be quite keen to see us do that. And obviously, you know, as I say, entering this sort of new phase. So this really is about sort of growing what we've been doing. So some of those things in that last bullet point are some of those plans that we've talked about, you know, what can we do to sort of bring other things into the hubs that will help support the people who are attending. So as I say, we've got 8 hubs. You all have now received a written grant offer. Obviously, we had those discussions with you about what you might like to do and what those plans would potentially cost. And obviously, we've been able to make you a grant offer for some funding towards meeting those costs. What you now need to do, if you're minded to accept that offer, is to return that paperwork to us. And the minute we get that back, we will start making arrangements to pay the first 50% of your grant into your bank account. We're trying to sort of streamline the payments process because obviously, as you know, up until now, you've been claiming in arrears on a sort of monthly basis, and that's obviously quite time consuming for you and for us. So trying to make it simpler this time round, so pay you 50% up front, and then the second 50% you'll get at the end of October. I will still require you to obviously report on your attendees, etc., in the way that you've been used to doing. So do continue to keep track of those numbers, etc. But as I say, hopefully it'll take all the money side of things out of things. Graham, you said in the chat about who the 8 are. Yeah, of course. So the ones who've accepted so far are yourself at Little Thetford, the Hadnam hub, the hub at Stetchworth, and the hub at Fordham. And then offers have been made but not yet accepted at Ashley, Little Downham, Littleport and Soham. But I'm hoping those people will come forward and accept very shortly. And then obviously just to say there will be a June claim, obviously just to finish off this sort of first tranche of funding, and I'll be sending those forms out probably tomorrow now, and you can fill in your operating cost claims for June. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions about that. You can take down the slides if you want, Lisa. Can't see any hands. So yeah. So if nobody's got any questions, we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda, which I just thought you could spend sort of 2 or 3 minutes each, perhaps telling me how your hubs are getting on, just sharing with each other. I guess for me, you could talk about sort of whether you've got any sort of plans that you'd like to share about what you're going to do in future. But bearing in mind, this is about you as volunteers networking with each other. If you've got any worries about anything that's happening, or any concerns, or any questions about how somebody else is doing stuff, I guess this is a good time to talk those through. So, shall I pick someone to start? Jill, would you like to start? You need to unmute yourself, Jill. Sorry.
Hello. Right. Yes, I'm Jill. I'm from Littleport. I have got all the paperwork now signed, so I've just got that to scan back to you. We've got quite a lot of ideas of what we want to do to develop our community hub, and we're really mainly at the stage, I think, of having lots of discussions and lots of meetings with various partners as to what that's going to look like, and who can help us and who can do what. We've got links with the social prescriber. We've got links with Catherine Buck, who's the older person's worker for the town council, and the Joe Coe, who's the youth person for the town council. So we've got those sort of people on board to look at different ideas and things that they would like to develop. We've got links with Wood Green as well, who are supporting with around animal health issues as well, for lots of people who've got queries about vet fees and that kind of things. So we've got lots of sort of ideas in the mix at the minute. It's just we're just sort of trying to sort out really, I think, where we want to start first and what we want to sort of focus on first, so that we're not trying to do so many things that we're not actually doing anything very well, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know sometimes you feel like you're just trying to do so much and you're keeping all the plates spinning, but yeah, no, sometimes it's just to narrow down onto the things that are most important to you and crash through those. Lovely, thank you. Naomi, you're here representing Fordham, I believe.
Hello, yes, that's right. So I'm Naomi G. Cock and I help out at the Warm Hub. You'd normally have Sonia on the line, but she unfortunately can't be with you today. So my update will be quite brief, if I'm honest, because I don't know the details of what Sonia's doing behind the scenes or anybody else is doing with regards to future planning. But with regards to the hub in Fordham, it is going well. It's very well as well. I say very well attended. It's in my view very well attended, and it does seem to be a very important part of some people's lives. The people that we do get coming in tend to be the same people. A lot of the time we get an odd newcomer coming in, but generally it's the same group of people of sort of round about 10 to 13 people each week. And some of those people are people that have some sort of additional needs, whether it's that they've got we've got people with dementia coming in, some are early onset and some are more progressive. And the support there is not just for the person with dementia, but it's actually for the carers or the people living with them, that I think is sometimes the most useful bit, because we'll take on talking to them, perhaps having a bit of a game of something with them, and just, or even just looking at books and talking through subjects that they are familiar with or places that they visited. And it just then can give the person who lives with them a bit of time to go off and do a puzzle. We've always got a puzzle on the go. We've always got a game of Scrabble on the go. Sometimes we have a bit of shuffleboard. And it is just somewhere nice for people to come, a safe space that people feel comfortable. And actually you can see the look on some of these people's faces where they do recognise us now in a way that they obviously didn't when they were first coming in. But it's not only for people with additional needs. Of course, there's people who just call in for a cuppa. But what I've also noticed as well is that actually some of the people are meeting outside of the hub now. And I've heard them saying, well, we meet up for a coffee on a Wednesday now. And so therefore, I think we must be doing something right if we're helping people to form friendship groups that they didn't necessarily have before they started coming to the hub. And if people don't come for a few weeks, there's no judgment, but we do sometimes say, has anybody seen whoever, if we've not seen them, just to make sure that they're all right. So yeah, I think that's about it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Oh, thanks, Naomi. I think that's really good. And I think there's a couple of things that you said there that I think strike bells. I think the first thing is sort of like that, hubs providing respite for people almost. I mean, it's a very small respite if it's only a couple of hours, but, that might be making all the difference to somebody who's obviously been a carer for somebody else. And the other thing you just said about the friendships, I went out to see a hub in South Cambridgeshire yesterday, and heard a very similar story there about two people who didn't know each other, met at the hub. One was an older lady, one was a slightly younger gentleman, and the lady needed some jobs done around her house, and she didn't know sort of really where to turn to. So this chap has now they've become friends through the hub. He's helped her with the job she needed doing at the house, and she said to him, "Oh, I'd like to pay you," and he said, "Oh no, I don't want any money at all." So she said, well, what could I do? What could I do to thank you? And he said, well, I've got a pair of trousers that need altering. I can't wear them. They just need a button fixing. Would you be able to help with that? So these two people, I'd say, who didn't know each other have not only become friends, but have found a way to help each other out. And I just think that's, you know, that's a wonderful thing that, you know, hubs can do that, actually help people feel part of a community and you know, help each other. And then they're definitely doing something right. So thanks.
Sounds like a time bank.
Yeah, almost, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you're right, it is only for a short period of time, but you can see the weight drop from, you know, a particular lady's shoulder when she walks through the door and she knows that actually she can just have a little bit of her time, for even if it's just for a short period. So yeah, I must admit, when you was telling that story and having listened to the man talking about Fleabag, I wasn't quite sure where you were going with that. But...
I don't think he whipped his trousers off there and then, don't worry. Anyway, Graham, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your hub?
Graham.
I'm Graham James from Little Thetford. Little Thetford is just off the A10 between Ely and Streatham. It's a cul-de-sac village, so there's one road in, one road out. So you know, you have to go in there, and if you intend to be there, we're getting sort of a regular 25 people along on a Monday, and like Naomi was saying, very much seen as an integral part of their lives, to the extent that we actually, people are telling us in advance, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be there next week, or I get a WhatsApp message saying I can't be there, but can you please, you know, give my apologies to everybody. We very much, one of the things that we really do is use a community table. Whilst there are other tables available, we just have one big table. And interestingly, I was a bit concerned about that at first, as to whether people would sort of try to take ownership of a particular seat or a particular area. But that's not the case. They move around, and even when they're there, they sort of move around and chat to people and do things. So that's working very well. And what we're looking to do by way of expansion this year is, we were very conscious that we were just focused. It wasn't so much our focus, but the main people taking advantage of the hub were primarily older people. We did have some younger people who came in, particularly at half term or something, but we tried arranging a few half-term activities, and they sort of fell over. And when I spoke to people who I sort of anticipated being there, they said, well, that's, you know, I'd forgotten this, of course, school holidays is the only time we can go away. And so, you know, whether that's going abroad or going to see family who live elsewhere in the country. So what we're doing is we're moving what was our Thursday hub for the older. We're doing that primarily aimed at parents, babies and toddlers, and we've got a 3-week pilot going on, which is going to run through July. It's partly being funded and subsidised by the village hall trustees themselves and by some people. We were asked, well, why aren't you doing it for free? And I said, well, one is the cost, but also you only value something if you pay for it. And that's very much the mantra that we've sort of done. Now, we are aware of certain people in the village who will struggle with anything. And we deal with those on a one-by-one sort of basis, if you like, behind closed doors, and just talk to them and encourage them that if we're providing something for nothing, then maybe they could come along and help at a hub or one of our events. And one of the things we have really looked at is expanding the number of and type of events that we're doing, partly because it's of interest. I'm the caretaker, but I'm also the lead volunteer, but I'm also the event coordinator. And finally persuading the chairman that it's not, everything doesn't have to make a profit, as long as it doesn't make a stonking loss, then that's okay. So, for example, we had a really interesting event on Friday where we had a lady from Ely called Lizzie Alt, who came and spoke about Fenland folklore, because we've had a lot of people come along and talk about Fenland history, but no one talking about the folklore. And she's actually an artist, and the stance she took, because she had an exhibition at the Babylon Theatre, sorry, not theatre, the Babylon Centre, was when she sees these things, how did she come up with her view of the imagery? And I was amazed by the feedback by a lot of people who go to the hub, but a lot of other people as well. So it's such an interesting take on seeing things. And it made me think, well, actually, you know, we just need to try things out, be adventurous, and because you're always going to get a few people come along. It doesn't matter if you said we're going to put black plastic sacks together, they'll turn up. But there are others who come along, and we had some very, very positive feedback. In the summer holidays, we're doing 3 films for children through our partnership with Creative Arts East. And these are fairly new releases. So we're doing Puss in Boots, we're doing Mario, and we are doing Matilda the musical. And again, which as long as we're not losing money, we will actually make a bit of money out of those. And as we move forward, again, some of the taking feedback from people, they said we know they really like the classic films. So starting in October, we're going to be doing a matinee performance of some Roman Holiday, which was the one from 1956, Audrey Hepburn, etc. And people are very excited about that. And there are a number of reasons for doing that, but primarily for me, it's about making sure people enjoy themselves and get out. But I'm also hoping to then attract more people to the hub, because we've tried various initiatives, you know, bring a friend and all of those things. And where I've come down to the view on this is I've got to put on something which will actually encourage them to come along. And it doesn't matter if it's a quiz, doesn't matter if it's something that gets them to want to come, rather than people knocking on their door and dragging them along. And we've done that with a few things, and that's why we've slowly built up our core nucleus to things that are going. A couple of things that I'm interested in sort of exploring and getting some feedback on is that, especially with the children and younger people and the parents, I've got a mind, Alison, I'd like something like to encourage a health professional that could come along and talk about those sorts of things, but in a very informal way, so that they're just there, if you like, when people come along. And when you put up your first slide, it sort of seemed to fit in with that. So I didn't know whether there's any links that you can provide for that. And I was interested to hear about Littleport already into the social prescribing piece. And I'd like to sort of know and understand a bit more around that. Apart from that, the next sort of activity that I'm looking to move us into by way of a bit more diversity is a sort of a stroll and natter type of approach. And I know I spoke with Alison about maybe trying to get some identify some courses or something for leaders who can do this. Doesn't have to be anything overly exciting, but so that we all understand what the health and safety issues are and what needs to happen. Because we see the little kids from the preschool go out, and you know they've got someone there with a first aid bag and everything. Well, do we need to go to that level or not? What's good? But at the moment, I'm very conscious that people come there and they sit there and they have a really good time and they have a chat and they eat cake and coffee, and then they all complain about we're eating too much cake. And you know, then there are a few of them would like to go for a walk and a stroll. And we're lucky that we've got a big field there. We've got the village, which would be interesting, and that's something which I'm looking to do. I've got a volunteer lined up for it. They don't know it yet, but I've got a volunteer lined up to do that sort of training, if we can begin to do that. But primarily, what I'm using is almost using the concept of the Warm Hub Community Hub as the core of what we're now doing from the village hall. And so a lot of the activities that we're putting on, we stress the point this is part of development of a community hub. And the response from the parish council has been interesting. because now they're sort of saying, well, that's something you should be dealing with. And I'm saying, well, actually, no, that's parish council responsibility. Yeah, but we haven't got time for that. So, you know, maybe do it. And so there is a bit of a dilemma, and I don't want to create a monster which suddenly ends up with inbreeding conflict. So, you know, I go along every parish council meeting and just give them a brief update on what we're doing. As you know, we're also doing modernisation, electrification of the hall and everything else. But there is something around just making sure the relationships that we have with the groups that already exist, that we're not overly treading on toes.
Yeah, no, I agree, Graham. It's always a good point, you know, because as you say, that part of this is about sort of looking at who else we can work with, but as you say, then it's about managing those relationships and making sure you're not causing conflict where there doesn't need to be any. Both the things you mentioned, obviously, about the somebody to perhaps to support the mums and toddlers with their sort of health and well-being, and the social prescriber, and also your point about somebody to lead walks. They're all things that we've made a note of already. So I'll do some digging and find out who the right people are for you to talk to around those. So yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Right, as we're only a small group, I think that's everybody. But just to say, I mean, Rachel, Lisa, and I went out, and as I say, we've seen all the other hubs. They've all got very sort of similar plans to you, I guess, which is really along the lines of, yes, they want to sort of carry on doing what they've done so far, which is, you know, building that sort of safe, friendly space for people to come along for sort of informal refreshments, companionship, and support where it's needed. But yeah, I think every hub that we've spoken to has sort of got plans to sort of try and build on what they're already doing and sort of gradually expand their offer. So
Graham,
when
I went out and talked to Hadlam, they were thinking about doing a film afternoon. I think they were thinking about doing it. So if they're definitely going ahead with that, can I give them you as a contact to chat to see how you're going ahead and doing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've now shown we've shown a few films, but we're also part of the National Theatre Live, NT Live, which is a sort of a crossover between film and live stage show. Yeah, we've actually invested in our own equipment on it, but there are ways of where that can be linked and borrowed, partly through the partnership that ACRE have with Creative Arts East as well. But by all means, put them in touch.
Yeah, okay, that'd be handy if if they're still thinking about it. It was one of those ideas that was thrown out, and then came up with a load of barriers as to why they couldn't do it. But I was just thinking, well, if you are already doing it, then you've obviously overcome them. So
oh yeah.
So we can pass that knowledge on, I think.
Yeah.
And as Graham says, Rachel, obviously through the rural touring programme, we can obviously get them access to the films, etc., through Creative Arts East. So we need to link them up with them as well. Lovely. So I think that probably leads us quite nicely on then, Rachel, to your few slides about how to engage more people in your hub.
Okay. Yeah. Are we? Yeah.
It works. Hold on, bear with me. Is that okay? Have you got the right view?
Yeah,
got the right view, got the wrong slide.
Oh, that's fine.
Next one on.
Yeah,
I do want that one, Lisa. We've done that one.
Sorry.
I'm bored now.
I'm doing so well.
Okay, I'm just going to have to move a second. On my screen, we're covering a good chunk of my slides. I can't see anything. Okay, right. Just a little top up on engaging more of your community, because the vast majority of hubs that we speak to do want to. It does vary a little bit as to who people want to go and engage with. So I suppose there's a very long list there of practical ways you can do it, but I actually thought I'd talk you through what I do, because I quite often get given pieces of work at Cambridgeshire Acre and get told, right, off you go and find some young people, off you go and find some old people, off you go and find some people with red hair, a cast in one eye, wearing a red dress or something along those lines, quite specific. So what I tend to do is I think, well, who is it that I want to reach, and drill down into that first. And sometimes you can't, so sometimes it's quite general. And then I started thinking about how am I going to get hold of these people? Can I reach them directly? So it's an obvious way of getting at them, or do I have to do it indirectly? Now, this might work for some of the hubs, because some of the things I suggested, I know when I suggested it, when I talked to other hubs, they sort of looked at me slightly askance. So that's not going to work, because that's not actually where. So if you wanted to reach out to somebody that was isolated, that's quite a hard person to reach out to, because they are by definition isolated. So can you reach them directly can you reach them indirectly? So can you actually reach perhaps their neighbour or their mother or their daughter or something along those lines? So which way are you going to go? So when you've identified who it is you want to talk to, the next thing I tend to think of is, where do they go and what do they do? So if it's somebody like who is perhaps 85, not going out very much, they still go somewhere. They still go to a shop. And they're still going to a doctor's surgery. So those are the places you could start to reach out. So first question, who do I want to reach out to? And then secondly, where are they going and what do they do? And then the next question is one that Graham very eruditely pointed out, is what do they want to do? What is actually going to get them out of their house, get them to take their slippers off? And this is all engagement. What is it that's actually going to make people want to come to what it is you're doing? In other words, what are they going to enjoy? I never would ever quote Jeremy Clarkson as a lifestyle guru, but I did hear him on the radio once, and somebody said to him, how do you decide what you're going to do? You must have about 20 offers a day. How do you decide what you do? And he said, I decide what's the most fun. And that really is quite a good way of thinking to yourself, how am I going to get people out to whatever it is I'm going to do? I'm going to give them a film evening. I'm just going to give them some cake. What is it that's going to drive people to come out of their house, take their slippers off and get out there and come and see you? So that's kind of always up there in my brain when I'm thinking. And then I started thinking about, and another point Graham made when he started talking about engaging with school children. Now, in days gone by, when my kids were in school, I was very much clued into the school holidays and what was going on and when things were. Now I'm slightly more distanced, and I wouldn't know. And also my sons have grown up, so I don't really know what they do and what floats their boat the most. So sometimes you need to go and talk to somebody else in your village who actually does deal with them. So maybe go and talk to the school, because you've organised an amazing event and the school will turn around and say, yeah, that's really great, but we've actually got sports day on that day, or we've actually got this, that and the other on that day. I've done events where I turn up there and they say, actually, all the children in the village are going to a birthday party that day. If I'd actually spoken to somebody who had children in that village, they'd have told me that. So actually talking to the people who do work with the people that you want to talk to, or even know them a bit better, is a good way of engaging as well, if you're not entirely sure. And then the other big hint I can give you is just do it over and over and over again. And then when you've done it over and over again, you think everybody's bored, do it one more time, because I can guarantee you that you won't reach everyone. And even if you do reach everyone, they're not paying attention half the time. So you might think, I'm going to bore people to death and not going to want to see this on here from me ever again, but actually they probably haven't seen it, or if they have seen it, they might not have registered it. So just keep on going. So all the bullet points on the screen here are all excellent ways that you can get to people. And when I was talking about indirect, I know I went to one hub and I said you could take posters and postcards and put them at local events. So just take the postcards, put them at a local event. You don't even have to go to that local event if you don't want to. So there's a bonsai event in your village hall. Just put your postcards down somewhere. Just put them in that event. You don't have to go. And they say, yeah, but the people who we want to reach to, they're not going to be doing bonsai. So no, they might not, but their daughter, their son, their mother, their neighbour, somebody else might. If you do that often enough, so go to the local gardening group, take them to the WI. Will you just put these postcards here? Because the person that you're trying to reach might not be there, but they're somebody they know might, who think it's a good idea for that person to go. So these are kind of like little thoughts I had when I was reading my way through the bullet points here. So yeah, so these are the basic, what I will call the sort of fairly standard ways I would go through things. Look for your local websites, so that's parish council websites as well, your community magazines. Word of mouth, I think, is incredibly important. Facebook, it depends who you're trying to get at on these ones. I think the posters and postcards and leafleting houses are all pretty good ways, but mostly kind of think, what is going to get people out to your hub? What do they want to do? What would get you there? And if you're not sure, because your mind is not the same as an 11-year-old girl, perish the thought, then go and talk to somebody who knows an 11-year-old girl and see what they think an 11-year-old girl might actually turn up to your hub to do. So to help you do that as well, we've also obviously, guess you probably clued onto the fact we've rebranded. So we've got a new logo, which is jolly purple colours, lilac and gold sort of colours. And the logo for you to use has proud to be part of, and it's the Community Hub network. And we can supply you with designs for feather banners and posters and template wording. Thank you. Look at that. And the posters you can also edit yourself now, I think, can't you, Ali? I had a quick look at them.
You can't, well, unless you've got PowerPoint, you couldn't edit it yourself, but as it's literally what we've got a new poster design, and what was it, so very like the Warm Hubs posters that you had, very similar looking to that, but just in the new colour scheme. If you tell us what wording you'd like on there, we can very quickly work that out for you and send you a print ready version. So yeah, that's the way it will work.
Well, we can edit it for you.
The royal we.
The royal we. Yeah. So it's all there, and a template for news releases and social media and things like that. And of course, you can always get back to us if you get a bit stuck for ideas as well. So that's my sort of rather rapid run through. You had the ideas there, and also my take on how I set about doing a bit of engagement. Graham.
Yeah, just wanted to. It builds on something you said in the middle, Rachel. It's publicising success, and with events, it's not only talking about the events that are coming, it's also about the event that you just had. So who went along? Because what that will do is it encourages other people then to say, "Oh yeah, I had a great time," because the people aren't, they're often very reluctant to sort of say those things. But it's amazing the impact that even half a dozen positive social media posts can have. What I've noticed is on some of the ones we're doing, we don't necessarily get many comments, but we're getting a lot of likes, a lot of hearts.
Yeah.
And so people are reading it, people are acknowledging it. So it's about sort of getting the message out there, and certainly on the successes, when we have a successful event, just putting it out there. And it's amazing that also encourages people to come along. And we are getting a few people from other villages who come along because they like the atmosphere that we create there.
You just cannot tell people enough how fantastic what you're doing is. You just can't, because people love a success. They just want to hear about success, and they don't want to go to something that looks dreary and boring. And even if you did, they just want to go to something that looks great fun, and is vibrant and alive. And the more you put stuff out there, the more vibrant and alive your hub will be. Will seem, and then will be, actually.
Yeah, very much.
Does anybody else have any questions for Rachel? If not, we'll take those slides down, Lisa, because we don't need those for the next bit. Nobody else has got a hand up. Okay, so I think I'm going to hand over now, introduce you to James once again, get him to introduce himself perhaps, and then he's going to talk to us about digital health. James.
Hi, I'm James. I've done some work with Cambridgeshire before, over a few years ago. Really, it was a few years ago now, but I did do a number of different projects around engagement and stuff like that. And I do all sorts of work with charities across the east of England and sometimes London. And I actually live in Ely, so I'm quite sort of local myself. And the piece of work I'm doing, it's going to be some fundraising applications ultimately for funding to deliver a project that's concerned with digital access to health and social care. But I think it'd probably be a little bit broader than that. That's sort of where it started, and we're interested to know. I'm interested to know if there's an appetite for it being a bit broader than that. But in a nutshell, it's the sort of premise is that lots of people are excluded from accessing health and social care because of their digital barriers, digital barriers that they experience. So at the most basic level, and I can think of my mum's in this position, you know, her doctors now is pretty inaccessible unless you're prepared to go online and access, you know, the chance to have an appointment, send an email to express your condition. And she just can't work out how to do it. And she does use computer herself, and she uses an iPad, but she just can't, and she can't bear the idea of it as well. And she gets quite annoyed by it. So I think so many people are in that position at that level, and there are so many other health and social care barriers for people now. It's so hard to get on the phone to anyone, as we all know. So this project's sort of main element, really, and partly I think the main element, because it probably will be attractive to funders as well, is around that. So facilitating and supporting people to upskill in terms of their digital skills, to have access to some digital equipment on a borrowing basis if they haven't got any, to have a place they can come for some informal support around digital access as well, and then some very specific help around accessing health and social care that they need through digital means. So it would, you know, and it's interesting what you're saying about the hubs, because they sound really informal, and I think that's probably a lot of their attraction, that it's not all sort of, right, you must be here by 10 o'clock for this training and 2 o'clock for that training. And, you know, it sounds like people can kind of come and feel their way through things, and that people providing support as volunteers are very flexible and relaxed about, you know, how things work. And I think this would be the way that this project would be presented to people. So it's not, you know, it hopefully will meet their personal needs. I think the bit beyond that we've sort of come up with the idea of is, you know, just helping people generally with their digital barriers, if you like, just helping people understand how to get online and how to do certain things. So many people, myself included, you know, we're sort of stuck in a revolving door at home, trying to work out how we can do things that we're, you know, we just can't get beyond something online. It's just impossible because we're not digital experts. And if there was somewhere you could go with your laptop, if you've got a laptop, or go and someone could switch on a computer, you could explain to someone who knows a bit what your problem is, and they could help you get online to do your banking or deal with this or that, then it would just take so much of the weight and frustration out of your day. Even if it doesn't come to anything, there might be other people there, you know, peers giving a bit of advice. So I think the idea of a bit of a gentle community help desk happening, you know, certain days of the week, and then some more slightly more formal and specific stuff around health and social care as well. So that's the project and idea. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and you'll obviously comment on that in a minute, is, you know, it would be really good, and we really need to sort of do some consultation with people around this, not for it to be a fait accompli that this is what we want to do, but this is a rough idea. What do you think about it? But possibly starting off with what barriers do you experience? Well, do you experience any digital barriers? Do you experience any barriers to access in health and social care? And are any of them digital? Asking those kinds of questions, and then talking about this idea and getting people's views.
Thanks, James. I was going to call on Jill first, because I know, Jill, when I came out and talked to you about your hub, you were telling me that you and your volunteers, you spend quite a lot of time helping people fill in forms. to sort of access particular things. And I'm guessing probably some of that is because they don't have the digital abilities to do that kind of thing for themselves, either because they don't have the kit or they don't quite understand how to do it. So I wondered if you just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I think there's a number of problems. Some people don't have, well, they don't have the equipment to do it, or if they do, I mean, I have a particular gentleman where we were trying to do a PIP interview with a sort of an ancient phone where the battery doesn't hold its charge, and you know it's really difficult. Or again, if they've got a laptop, it probably doesn't have, you know, a camera facility, or they can't print, or it's actually so old and creaky that it's sort of not really very useful. So yes, and we end up at the minute having to use, you know, I mean, I just make phone calls or do it from that, but you know, I think it would be useful. We've talked about having a laptop that we could use to help and assist people with that sort of thing. But going on from what you're saying there, I think that's really important. But I mean, I'm thinking again, if they don't have the tech, or if they do, or they've got something that's perhaps different to what you use yourself, it's sort of, again, perhaps having almost like a volunteer person in each hub, perhaps, where you can, you know, you can have a bit of training as how to best go about helping someone so that they know the basics that they need, and that we can, you know, can do that. I mean, for example, I always use an iPhone, so if they come along with a Samsung, I find that quite hard, and especially if it's sort of 10 years old as well, you know, and they're saying, well, why can't I this, what about that? And you're thinking, well, I don't know, I know it's like on mine, but it's really difficult.
Yeah.
You're trying to sort of fumble around and help people, and I think that would be useful to have some support around that, and within that project perhaps to sort of train up some, you know, volunteer digital champions that can actually help with that.
Yeah, that's good feedback and useful specifics.
I mean, even buying equipment. I mean, we've got one gentleman where we've helped him to get a phone. Well, he wants basically something more reliable than the brick he was carrying around. He doesn't need it to be all singing or dancing. He's not going to be doing anything other really than phone calls and some very simple text messages. But it's sort of knowing the best way to go around those kind of things.
So that's an interesting idea, actually, someone who can give advice on new equipment, because exactly the same situation with that same mum of mine that I was mentioning earlier. You know, she had a brick for years and years and years and made a big joke about it, and we did too, but you could just about receive text, you couldn't receive pictures. But when it finally gave up, my brother bought her a phone as simple as he could find, but it's still too complicated for her, and she's struggled with it, to be honest. So yeah, I think knowing someone who knows what's out there would be, you know, that's good.
And also sort of safety, because once they get the phone, I mean, they, you know, they're not perhaps aware of, you know, avoiding downloading viruses and things like that. It's very easy to get on the internet without being aware of what they're doing. We've had issues with a gentleman with learning difficulties, sort of posting all sorts of things on Twitter that he didn't know, which includes other people's information. You know, I went to see so and so last night, and they live at so and so. So you know, there's quite a lot of issues around that stuff.
Yeah, it is about keeping people safe, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, I do think there's quite a lot of fear out there in terms of, because I mean, I talk about family members, but I certainly had a mother-in-law, an ex-mother, who refused point blank to get involved in anything IT based due to all the scams, all the trouble, all the, you know, somebody somewhere having all their money removed from their bank account, somebody that she'd never heard of in Aberdeen or something. But that was enough to make her think, I'm not going down this route. And I do think what Jill says, I do think having peers doing it is really important. You have somebody, they don't really want you know, somebody that's 20 telling them how to do, or I don't want somebody that's 20. I'll sit down with somebody my age who'll say, oh, you daft old biddy, you know, you do this and you've got to do it because you've got to keep up with the times. That's what I need, you know, that's what I need to be told, why I need to do it. I think not just you have to do this, but you know, that kind of so I think the scams and the peer, and I do think it's quite a lot of this. I mean, I don't know how Graham and Naomi think, but I know, and Lisa and Ali, when we've been going out, but I'm picking up that loads of people are filling in forms and helping with phones and showing people how to do. So I think it's already going on at a kind of low level, undetected collective level, really, James.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of it going on, but I think there's a lot more needed. It's not going on and that's it. It's solved, problem solved.
So
There's a lot of it going
it would
on.
be nice to find out about those.
Yeah, I think
those initial experiences of doing it, because that would actually, because it would be good to tease that out and find out, you know, what people have.
Yeah, what are people helping other people with, and what can't they help them with? Like, as you say, is that because the equipment is ancient? Is that because I mean, I'm a total Android user. I wouldn't be able to help anybody with an Apple product at all because I just can't get my head around it at all. So and there is things like that, you know, just little barriers that you don't really.
If you think about it, I mean, I've worked from home for a long time on my own, but I still remember when I did work in an office and how much support is available really from different people in the room. Like, does anyone know how to? Does anyone know how to? And yet when you're on your own at home, you just don't. And so you feel it yourself in a work role, you know, and then people who've got, you know, and I'm not bad, but people who've got very limited interest and ability with IT at home must just feel completely disabled by, you know, services now, because, you know, I mean, we've all spent hours getting nowhere on the phone, and it's like, shall I download the app? I don't know, you know.
I was interested to hear what you said about your mother being a bit cross about having to do her appointments online, and I certainly get that from quite a few people I know, and I occasionally feel it myself. I kind of think, well, why am I being pushed to do this? And it builds resentment and it builds frustration, and you kind of, there's something there that we need to maybe address, is that actually we're going to have to accept this is how it will be. You might not want to do it this way, and you might, but actually in order to survive you're gonna have to,
and you
or
know
you're
what?
gonna have to find a way of doing it.
I think the frustration is as much with the lack of consistency of who you speak to and what you speak about. So, you know, I think if it was the one doctor that was always available by email, my mum would be happy to email her family. But you get pushed around and pulled around, and that's where the hub's so good, that it could be the consistency. You know, that could be the thing that at least people have got the consistency of the hub, and having people's, because it's that frustration of having to explain it all again to someone new and all of that. So I think that's where we could present this project in that way. You know, the hub provides some consistency, something reliable, something people trust. Yes, it's a you know, it's the Wild West out there trying to deal with stuff, but this project can't promise brilliant, perfect IT support. What it can promise is someone to do that, you know, people to try and help and get the information from somewhere at some point, and you know, so that could all be very positive, I think.
I'm just trying to think of the hubs that we know. Are we pretty convinced that there would be people in every hub that would be willing to take on that role, to be a sort of digital mentor?
I don't think it needs to be all of them, but yeah, I suspect from the conversations we've had. Naomi, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, thanks ever so much. First of all, I need to apologise for not putting the camera on because I can't work out how to put it on. It's taken me that long to work out how to put my hand up. I used to use Teams, and this is just slightly different, and it just proves the point that actually I've been fiddling around along the bottom for ages and eventually worked out how to put my hand up. I think it is a brilliant idea. I think I get so frustrated. Oh, hang on. Yeah, no, I've got to try and work out. I've got to go into the settings to change my settings. Sorry. I find it frustrating even for myself when I turn up in a car park and then suddenly I've got to download an app, even to just park my car. I'm almost celebrating when I can pay with a card. I guess, and I do think it is really important. And I was really listening, James. I think it is a wonderful thing and an absolute gift if you can even start to reach a few people. But what I do think where it gets tricky is the people we want to reach will be the people who won't necessarily see that you want to reach them because they don't use the digital stuff. You know, it's how we reach those people. And I know, yes, it's through the hub and what we can do through the hub, but you know, it's other people as well. And I'm thinking of people that I know, and even elderly relatives who will phone me up and say, I've had this call, because there are so many scams about, and they are so persistent that people do get very panicky very quickly, and rightfully so, because it's very easy for switched on people to tie an elderly person into knots quite quickly. You know, I'm almost pleased that my 91-year-old mother is now to a point where she wouldn't be able to read out her card number. That gives me a level of safety, and it really shouldn't be like that.
No. I think
But anyway, so well done is what I want to say. I think it's a
Thank
great
you.
idea.
I think there's something in this whole project idea though, which is about, even if it's just getting people talking about this kind of thing and raising their level of confidence to sort of say to them, actually, it's okay to say no. If you do get a phone call or an email you're not sure about, ignore it or delete the email. Don't worry. If it's important, they'll find another way to contact you. And I think there's something about, you know, people who aren't digitally confident just sometimes need that boost in, it's okay, you know, don't worry. And I think yeah, the hubs could be the mechanism by which, you know, we can help raise their confidence about
it could be the platform that gives people the space to have the conversation, because you know, if you went for a coffee morning, or you know, you might go and see your friend, that you don't necessarily want to bring your IT problems and your the digital barriers you're experiencing to that lunch you're having with people. It's not in. But this could be a space where people know that it's all right. They could store it up, they could list it, and then they could come the next week knowing that it's an hour.
And I think it comes back to what Jill was saying, is if they know there's somebody who's a digital champion, if you like, in their hub, they know that's the person they can ask, and you know, there'll be no.
And some other volunteers as well who know a bit, and some friends there who know a bit. I mean, I've got an IT guy, and I literally, you know, quite often I've got low level issues and queries that I don't go to him straight away over. I'll sort of list them up, and then when I speak to him next, we'll go through them all. And because you just want to, at some point, I need to learn how to print this from that. You know, how do I print from my phone? This kind of thing. So yeah, I think it sounds that that's two really nice bits of feedback. Thank you. And I think the whole thing could take a domino effect. It could be, you know, how to say my answer. I guess my answer to Naomi, if she's still there, she got Naomi, it's just regarding how you reach other people. I think maybe it's one of those where you don't. I mean, you do have could have some ideas and stuff, but you don't quite know. It's just a case of hopefully the project has a bit of a life of its own and people talk about it. And so, well, you need to go to so and so says to so and so. Well, you need to go to the hub, don't you, on a Thursday, because they deal with it. Computer problems. Then there's, you know, Bob, he's really good at doing that, and he's helped me loads. And then someone thinks, I'll come. I might as well come and see what it's like.
Yeah, Graham, you and I had a conversation about possibly sort of loan equipment at Little Thetford to help some of your attendees. Have you got thoughts you'd like to share? Yeah,
very much. First of all, a very interesting project, something I'd certainly like to get behind, James, from within Little Thetford. And if I start at the macro level, I think one of the things for me that would be very important around this is to actually make sure that the hub or the community hub or whatever, and the people doing it have got credibility. And so while it's good to have a pilot on something, I think it's something around making sure that you've got the right people upskilled in the first place, because especially with tech and things, that can be something which is quite difficult. To answer your specific, Alison, yes, very much around laptops. But one thing I'd also think which would be very valuable is a printer, because there are a lot of people in the village who, in the conversations I've had with them, where they say, oh, you know, you say, well, you know, print it out. I haven't got a printer, because they have no need for a printer. You know, they may use a printer twice a year. And, you know, if you could say to them, look, you know, bring your laptop or whatever, or your document, come to us. And nowadays you can get the sort of inkwell printers rather than the cartridge ones for sort of, you know, a couple of £100. And I think that in terms of what that would do from your perspective, James, is it's something very positive that isn't, you know, within a budget line, isn't huge, but it's something that can make a massive difference to what people do. and you can see how that can expand. Going to what we've all been talking about today in terms of trying to encourage people to come along, and the lessons that we've learned, I think that for me, one of the key themes that comes through is you want people, getting people to come along because they want to, not because they have to. And I think that's the same in relation to something to do with tech.
Yeah.
We want them to come along because they want to. So what do they actually want to come along to? They invariably, the reason they want to access the tech is to see photographs and videos of grandchildren. That's the first thing. Whenever you talk to them, that's their real need. Yes, you then begin to have the conversation with them about, well, you could then use it for forms and contact, but it's identifying what are those 1, 2, 3 things that they really, really want. And what they want is to be able to access that. Once you've got them over that hurdle of this is actually a force for good, not a force for evil, then you can begin to have those further conversations. And the next one builds on what Jill and Naomi were saying around the fact of the fear of tech. And a lot of it, as we know, are myths. But there are still those inherent fears. And I remember a story told me many years ago about when a lady died, and she died in a house where it was in darkness and they couldn't understand. So she got admitted to hospital when the house was continually in darkness, and they couldn't understand why, because she had electricity. And what had happened was that the bulb had blown, but she didn't want to change the bulb because all that electricity would come flooding out into her house. Didn't understand the concept of what electricity was about. And it's about taking people along with us on this and recognizing it's a journey as opposed to pushing that through. The sort of things that are of concern to them, the annoyance is having to use IT for health things.
Yeah.
What they really need to do though is that it's finance, because they know that, be it paying for a car park. I mean, you go into Ely Market now and every stall are taking electronic payments. And so, you know, a lot of people are already beginning to go down that journey. And picking up on something that was said, something for Acre maybe to consider, I don't know, but is there a way that we can link into some charitable work around? People don't need, at a certain age, they don't need the latest iPhone, they don't need the latest the latest phone. They need something which is more than the clunky brick, but they don't need something there. So, you know, an iPhone which is 4 or 5 generations behind is still very, very good for what they need. And having a reputable market or a reputable supplier that people could go to for that would be of great help, particularly for those who are struggling and disadvantaged. Because what we haven't spoken about here this evening is that some of the hard to meet people are those who have the genuine needs, and some of it's embarrassment. They don't like to know and go along, and they're the ones who are going to become even more disenfranchised. So something around how we do with that sort of thing I've got in the back of my mind following the conversation with Alison is maybe trying to do some form of 1 day a month workshop where, you know, we say we're going to do a 5-minute lesson, and we're going to talk about this. But by the way, you know, if you've got any questions, then, you know, with your kit, bring it along, and we'll see what we can do. That's not to say we can't have those informal conversations in between, but it's trying to put just a very tiny bit of structure into that. And the last thing just wanted to say, James, and it's about the use of language.
Yeah. Because
the use of language that you and I may use in business will put people off when you come to talk to them. So I think you've got a double dilemma, because you've got to use the appropriate language for the funders and for the people who are doing it. But then in terms of the delivery, so, and I remember one of the jobs I'd had previously was in the Magistrates Inspectorate of Constabularies, and when the inspector went in to speak to the chief constable, he would talk to him about, so what are your objectives, what are your PIs, how's that doing? When we had the focus groups with the PCs, we knew that if we used that same language, it would go straight over the top of their head. So the language then became, so what's important to the boss? How does he know what you're doing? How do you know how he's doing? So it's about that differential in language around delivery. I'm sorry if I'm teaching. I'm not.
No, and it's really helpful to be. Actually, it's really helpful to have the reminder. I mean, it's the difference between access healthcare and speak to your doctor. And they're the same thing, but they need to be pitched at the right to the right people. So,
James, can I just want to got one eye on the time. Just thinking about what you want next. I think my understanding is you'd quite like to go out to a couple of hubs, have a cup of tea with some of the people at the hubs and talk to them directly.
That's right. I mean, it was basically and let me talk in business speak now, in bid speak. I wanted to do some consultation because I felt that would be really important for evidencing need for bids. And so we need, a sample of people from, let's say 3 hubs on a day when hopefully it'll be reasonably busy. And for me, with potentially some Cambridgeshire Acres staff to come in and I haven't formulated how to do it yet. And I think that's something I was hoping to get a little bit of an idea from you about as well. But, there's obviously all sorts of ways you can consult people. And one is you can produce an online form and send that around. But the other ways are you have some, there are all sorts of ways. And I was thinking of something much more informal with a few themes to talk about, and maybe a flip chart or something like that with me to take. Okay, that was just for me to take some notes, but
not a flip chart, no standing out the front.
All right. But so yeah, I would like to do that in the next few weeks ideally, but yeah. So what do you think, people?
Yeah, so I mean, Jill Graham, would you think it would be okay if sort of like we did, as I say, I think we know that what your attendees who come along to your hubs want is somebody just to talk to them. They don't really want somebody doing any kind of formal exercise. But I mean, would you both be open to that?
I think that would be useful to come and have a chat. Yes,
I think
absolutely. And if we've got a bit of notice, then we will get. Again, it's something that will interest certain people who we will try to then target and get along.
So, is the right way probably for me to have a little thing in my head and maybe on a one sheet of paper of things I want to talk about, and then someone else, ideally maybe from the team, taking some notes so that I don't have to keep taking notes or whatever. So, and then we've got some feedback, like stuff we can put in the bid, but it's done in a really chatty way.
Certainly from Little Thetford, what's worked well is where someone's come along and then just chats to 1 or 2 people at a time individually.
Okay.
And they can either sit down, be there when it starts, and then begin to catch them as they come in, as opposed to coming in when it's nearly full, because they're into the full swing of their conversations then.
Okay. So I can have some pointers and things we want to we want to talk to people about on a sheet, and then. But I make sure that I'm doing the conversation with them. Yeah,
and it's very much that, and certainly I'm sure Jill would agree. We just need some notice and just a few pointers of the sort of things you want to talk about and why, and we can then put that out onto Facebook to encourage people to come along.
How much notice do you think you'd need? Like if
2 weeks ideally.
2 weeks, okay, that's fine.
Ali, this isn't just East Camps, is it? This is.
It just for now, just so because obviously James is just working on thinking about sort of, you know, who we're going to apply to and where we would do this project. So this is basically just using the East Cambs hubs as a way of gathering.
When I went to Combaton, the one thing they wanted to do was IT skills. That was the one thing they were.
Yeah, I think probably James has only really got capacity to visit a couple of hubs. So I suspect, you know, if we can get Littleport and Little Thetford involved, then that probably does us. But we'll see how it goes, James.
Do you think would we be looking at 15 or so people? Do you think I could speak to them, or is that? Yeah.
I have 25. I say I regularly have 25 come along. We open at 10, and between 10 and 10:30, I probably get about 10 arrive.
Right.
And then over the next hour, the others come in, a few move away.
Okay.
So sort of, if it was like 10 till 12 or something like that, I was around, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. And Jill, what's it?
Can I have a think and email you? It's just I'm usually there on a Friday, but I know I'm not. I've got a couple of, and the next when I'm not, it might be better on a Tuesday so that I could be around as well. Otherwise, I don't want to sort of be giving it to the other volunteers.
Yeah.
To sort of be around. So I just need really to check the rota and see who's what and where really.
Would it be the same sort of time, sort of idea, or do?
Yes.
And sorry, Graham, did you say Thursday?
Mondays,
right. Okay, sorry.
And for us, it would be Tuesday or Friday. But as I said, I'll have a look and see. I think might be the best, the most useful slot for you to come to.
Great. That's perfect.
So we'll follow up, obviously, with the two of you directly. James will check his diary. We'll get you two to check. Obviously, we'll suggest some days, and you two can come back and obviously let us know what you want, and then we'll just firm up the arrangements.
And just
feel free to share my contact details with James.
Thanks.
Phone number and email and insight measurement and
excellent.
Whatever.
Just what you were saying about equipment, IT equipment. I mean, I just sent this to Kirsten the other day. I found it because we've been talking about that. If we were going to have some loan stuff, you know, we can't be going out and paying top dollar for it. And there used to be some recycling. There used to be a recycling charity, an IT recycling charity, and I don't think it probably exists anymore in Cambridgeshire. But I'm going to do some digging around on that and maybe some other sources. But I did notice the other day I was looking at moneysavingexpert.com, Martin Lewis's website, and they gave a link to Amazon Warehouse, which is, I think, Amazon selling things, you know, stuff getting sold that's, you know, past it's not this edition. It's not going to sell easily. It's a few editions old, or someone ordered it and then sent it back, that kind of thing. And there's some really good deals on laptops. Some of them are about 100 quid and things like that. So they're a couple of 100 quid, that sort of thing. And it's still expensive, but worth knowing about, I think. So that's something that we can, I guess this project could look into trying to source information on those kinds of things. And then also for this project, for the purpose of purchasing some equipment that can be loaned out, this sort of source, there might be other similar ones, could be a really useful place to go.
Yeah.
Don't forget our MP. Because Lucy Fraser, she's Secretary of State for DCMS, and she's up for anything like this. So if you, Ali, probably more linked with yourself, contacting her direct, because you'll get a response very, very quickly from her. And one, you'll get support, which is important, but you know, she may well have some ideas and some contacts.
That's a really good thought. Yeah, she's very helpful, isn't she? So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move us on because I'm conscious of time, and I just wanted Lisa, obviously we talked earlier about obviously how this sort of phase of the project is going to have this sort of greater emphasis on hubs raising some of their own funding. So Lisa was just going to share a quick slide, just giving some tips about community fundraising, but we are going to follow up on this with some more information by email. But Lisa, can I just get you just to perhaps talk through your slide?
And I will be very quick, because it does feel a bit like I'm teaching Granny how to suck eggs tonight, because everybody who's here has got great experience in this and really doesn't need me to tell them, especially Graham. Platinum Jubilee, Graham. We've worked very closely on that, haven't we?
We have indeed.
Yeah.
And then the community hub as well. Community fund.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I won't dwell too much on the slide. Let me just move it on. Here we go. Right. So I'll just take you through the few simple steps that are set out here. So we've all kind of been through the budget stage setting, looking at that and what you're all planning to do over the next few months and how you're going to deliver the programmed events. So then it's kind of unpicking that process and putting a bit more flesh on the bones to support your activities going forward. We've updated, or should I say Alison's updated very kindly, the community fundraising guide, which was issued to all of the warm hubs. So keep an eye out for the newsletter that's coming out to you, because the refreshed version of that is coming out, and there's lots of great ideas in there in terms of support, places you can go for funding, and lots of tips and hints. So just picking out some of those items and thinking about what your first step might want to be is, you know, refresh your budget, have a look at that, take a look at each line. What are the pros and cons to the things that you've come up with in terms of the approaches that you want to make? And as we've been going around talking to the hubs, all sorts of things are coming out in terms of what people are doing. Some people are making a direct grant to parish councils, for example. Some areas are really lucky and have got local benefactors, so they just know they've got to write to their local benefactors and they're pretty sound that they're going to get some support from them, or there's local companies that they can approach. And it's always good to have that personal contact, that personal rapport. You're obviously going to have a better response, a better starting point if you've got that personal rapport with any of those types of benefactors or local companies and local organisations, shops, etc. Others that I've spoken to, certainly I came across a hub the other day that's running a car boot sale. So, you know, the recreation ground's been given to them free. They're going to be able to organise it and take some profit from that. So it's about, you know, how creative you want to be in terms of your own active fundraising, as well as making those approaches to local organisations. Certainly some of the organisations, the hubs that I went round and spoken to, you know, the budget did leave us in a position where there's going to have to be those formal funding applications written to either national or, you know, county-wide funders. And, you know, it's about how we take that step and how we support you to be able to do that successfully and pull in as much money as possible to make your plans happen. In the guide that I've mentioned, the community fundraising guide, there are some templates in there to use. So there's a budget template, which is a replica of the one that we've already been through with you. So, you know, if you do want to renew or refresh your budget, you've got that template there. There's also a really useful planning guide in there so that you can actually set out, you know, how you're going to approach this and what are you going to do in terms of making these applications, and who's actually going to do the legwork really to get you to where you need to be. So the headings in that planning document, the things you've got to start thinking about is, you know, who you will approach, how much money you're looking for, who will write the applications, you know, what are the deadlines that you've got to meet. So, you know, the more you can share the load within your volunteers, if you've got 2 or 3 volunteers within your teams who are, you know, fairly confident at writing funding application forms and pulling all of this information together, then, you know, it's a really good idea to share it. But while sharing it, still have that structured plan about who's doing what, where, and who are you approaching, so that you don't end up 2 people, you know, writing to the same funder. The templates that we're providing will keep you on track, but also you've got help and support coming from us. So, you know, please don't hesitate in picking the phone up to us, because we'll be able to proofread your documents for you, support you in, gathering the information together. Whatever it is you need, do come back to us, and we can offer you that help and support. And I really just wanted to kind of leave you with one of the things that I personally picked up when I was in your position, doing funding applications for local groups and local organisations. And the one thing that I learned kind of working with a team of people locally was, do spend some time in writing down some text that explains and expresses what your group and organisation does. Don't assume that your funders know all about you. Don't assume your funders are familiar with what happens at your group and, and how you're going to execute your plans and deliver all of these wonderful things to the community. So, do spend that time sitting down, writing that text, writing that explanatory kind of description of what you do. It's a good idea to have a kind of a long version and then have a short version. So you've got a kind of a full text so that you can share it with everybody, but then, have those kind of like those sound bites, those little bits that you need to kind of like cut and paste and put into your funding application. If you spend the time doing that, it's going to make it much easier for you and your team. You're all talking from the same hymn sheet. You've all got the same information, the same message, and you can share that and, hopefully make that application process as, as trouble-free as possible for all of you, but have that confidence that you're all, you've all got the same message going forward. I just wanted to say about some of the ideas that have come out. We haven't got a huge crowd here tonight, but I've been really heartened by some of the things going around and talking to the hubs about, the way people are being really creative about raising money. And it might be that you're, as I said, doing the car boot sale, but raffles seem to be a kind of a really standard thing. Bingo nights, aquathon I came across the other day, that they were raising money through doing an aquathon. So there's some really great things coming forward which are engaging the wider community, and not just the people who come along and attend the hub. So again, it's about spreading that message, isn't it? And the more people you make aware about how you're raising money locally, make people think, well, actually, what's going on at this hub? Because actually, I think I might go along and I might try it out for myself and see what there is. So, please do share your ideas. And I think, this network is a really great forum where you can come together and offer your experiences and offer your tips and offer your successes as well. And I know, Graham's offered up the successes he's had recently, and that's going to be shared in the newsletter. But it's really good to be able to do that, because it offers such an opportunity to not only inspire people, but give people the confidence to also go forward and apply for these funds. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that was not too much of a rattle through, but I appreciate that everybody here is very experienced and probably doesn't need the information.
Thanks, Lisa. As I say, the good thing is we've been recording this, so we will be able to share it with those who perhaps aren't as confident and proficient. So yeah, thank you ever so much for that. I say, just very conscious of time. So just to let you know, obviously we'll circulate the newsletter tomorrow, as Lisa says. That's going to have a recording of this session, just in case you want to share that more widely with any of your other volunteers. There'll be the links to the marketing collateral that Rachel was talking about, and the link to the fundraising guide that Lisa's just been talking about, and there's some other bits and pieces in there that hopefully you'll find useful as well. Obviously we'll be in touch, James will be in touch obviously about setting up those sessions to come out and see your hubs. I had one more thing, which was just about how often you would like to meet, when would you like to meet again, but Graham, you've got your hand up as well.
It was just, I was aware that in looking at all the funding opportunities, James, I'd seen one recently, and it's the People's Health Trust, because they're going to be reopening in autumn. And there's the People's Health Trust Active Communities funding, and it very much seems to me to fit into what the aim of this project is.
I'll have another look at it. I've gone to it before years ago. I haven't been to it for ages. So
yeah, and the sorts of grant levels they're talking about is maximum value 40,000.
that's up from what they used to be. I think it used to be 30. I think they used to have an income level maximum that organisations had to be, and it was, I can't remember. So that's feasible. That could be an issue, but they may well have changed that, or I might be wrong. So I'll definitely have a look at that, Graham. Good thinking.
Yeah, applicants must have an income of less than 350,000. But it may be possible to either link directly with Acre or even with one or two hubs, because one of the things I've noticed recently is they're really welcoming groups of applying.
Okay.
So it's not just, if you like, one person. It's a group which is going to say, we can make a difference, and they also want to see pilots around things that can be trialed with a view to rolling out.
It sounds like it would be worth a question to them. And how are the hubs constituted?
Sorry, how are
they? Are the hubs? Do the hubs operate as not?
No, they're not. They're not entities in their own right, James.
No.
In most cases, they're either run through a village hall, or in St Gill's case, through a church.
But the village halls and churches and people could possibly work as partners to apply. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. That's useful to think about. Thank you, Graham. Cheers.
Lovely. Jill, Graham, in terms of meeting again, I mean, how is this useful first? And if it is useful, how often would you like to do it?
Jill, do you want to go, or do you want me?
Resounding silence.
I don't mind. Yes, I think it's useful. I think it needs to be enough time so that you've got time to sort of work on some things, so you've got something to come back with.
Yeah.
So perhaps, I don't know, every 3 months. Perhaps. What do you think, Graham?
I was going to suggest sort of every 3 months. To me, feels about right, because that gives, certainly in the first instance, because we're just moving into this new world, and there'll be things that are good, and also at the moment we're into the holiday season, so there'll be a bit of fluctuation and other things. So yeah, for me, 3 months feels about right.
What I might do, if it would be okay with you, I just think in the first instance, bearing in mind we're sort of end of June now, I wonder whether we could sort of like aim to get something in the diary for sort of the front end of September.
Yeah.
Just before we get sort of too far, just to make sure there's sort of, just keep things moving in the right direction. So it's sort of 3 calendar months, but won't be quite in exactly, if that's okay, just to keep things going.
And I would also look at one at the beginning of December.
Right.
Because before we get too heavily into the
into
festive spirit and other things.
Lovely. All right, that sounds good to me. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to just mention before we go? And I'll say we're 1 minute over, but unless anybody's got anything else they want to mention, we'll call it a night. No. Lovely. Well, thank you both for your time. I'm really pleased that you both of you came, because I think you've definitely both running really wonderful hubs that are really working well. So it's been good to have you both here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And
See you again soon.
Thanks to what you all do.
Yeah. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah.
All right. See you soon.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.